heard a teaching a couple of weeks ago. It was on this topic of self-compassion, and it got me thinking. I've been thinking quite a bit about it, actually. So in that teaching, the speaker said, many people don't tend to realize that they're suffering. And that being the case, even if we do have a sense that, oh, maybe this isn't a great moment for me, we either try to push through or minimize it or sort of reject it altogether in this kind of, well, other people have it way worse than me, and so why should I be so upset myself? But in reality, as the speaker continued, they said, we actually all suffer thousands of times a day. We become too hot or too cold. We feel upset about the way that we were treated. We get nervous sometimes when we're parking. We have unexpected things that happen in the day and we have to adjust. We hit our elbow and now like our funny bone is going crazy. So each of us, they said, struggles thousands of times a day. And then she continued on to talk about what are we going to do in those situations as we experience this struggle? And we'll talk about that in a moment. But what impressed me to actually want to try all of those helpful suggestions, it actually was what came next. She said, developing this awareness of our own suffering, having compassion for ourselves, that is the kindest thing that we can do so that we don't work ourselves up, for one thing, and so that we don't say things that are going to harm other people. And so her teaching ended with this idea that as you work on these various techniques, they will rewire your neural programming, which is something we've talked about here a lot. So you're going to eventually have this experience of becoming kinder to yourself, of being able to not react as strongly. And so I started to pay attention after I heard that talk to what are these little moments in my day where I'm experiencing suffering, moments when I feel too busy or I feel too interrupted or too frustrated, too agitated. And I started to take on some of her suggestions, which largely revolve around this idea of noticing it, taking in a breath or two, and saying, this is difficult, right? Just to acknowledge this is actually difficult. And probably the first couple of days, it was just an exercise. It probably didn't make a ton of difference as I just started getting into it. Maybe I was more aware, like, oh yeah, it is true. I do have these moments of suffering in my day. And there is this kind of moving in and out. So there's another idea I haven't even talked about yet, but we either operate out of the ego or we operate out of this fruits of the spirit. And we sort of move in between the two all day long. And so I was in a prayer and meditation moment, probably a week later, and there were these various prompts for the prayer time. It was like, oh, take a few minutes to sit in gratitude. And so you would be there and you would be grateful for whatever came to mind. And the light within, and so you'd take some time to, whatever that light within means to you. And then there was this prompt, may you be well. And this is easily recognizable from the loving kindness meditation, or as people would call it, the metta meditation. But as I sat with this notion of may you be well, may others be well, praying this blessing for others, all of my work in self-compassion over that last week or so started to swell up, started to come to mind. And it was this instant kind of spiritual experience where suddenly I was very aware of how like all these criticisms that I might have of others in my day-to-day life, they were just clearly projections of standards that I've held for myself. So my critiques were really, they initiated with me. They started here at the self. And it was just a split second where I became so profoundly aware how much I project, how much that happens in my day-to-day life. And then it was like this very interesting experience where almost as if the experience itself kind of like swooped up and fast forwarded into the present moment. Like knowledge was a picture and the picture sucked into the present moment, as if to say, now that you see, this is a new day. Almost like it was saying all of that is going to stay back there, and what you do going forward, that starts now. And so I thought I would briefly talk today about this notion of self-compassion. maybe if it's challenging for me, others can relate. Maybe this is an experience. And because our culture, it's not actually one to address self-compassion. And we've talked about this in previous weeks. Other cultures don't have a term for self-compassion. It's all just compassion. It's just understood. But when they started working with Westerners, they discovered Westerners, they don't get it. They don't have this understanding that compassion includes the self and even starts with the self. And so I've caught myself, that being the case, just knowing that information, I frequently, if I'm doing that loving kindness meditation, I will frequently skip ahead to the may you be well, may you be safe, may you be healthy. I'll skip myself as if like, oh, I don't need to worry about me. I've got all this other stuff that I'm thinking about. I need to get straight to that. But they actually say, we don't recommend that you skip ahead because what we're told is that if we have no compassion for ourselves, we won't really have compassion for other people. We don't have a grid for that. And in point of fact, that's exactly what Jesus tells us too, although I had never quite seen it, I don't think. Or maybe I'm just seeing it fresh. But in Matthew 22:39, we get this very familiar passage. Love your neighbor as yourself. And of course, if you know this passage, you know it's in the context of like, what are the words that we are living by? What is the law that we are to live by? And so he wraps up all these Old Testament teachings into these two things. Love God with everything in you and love your neighbor as yourself. And it actually comes up again later on in Galatians 5:14. Paul says the exact same thing. The whole law is summed up in only this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. And so it's this very thing that we were just talking about. If we have no compassion, no love for ourselves, how then are we going to have compassion and love for others? When Jesus tells us to love others as ourselves, really that first step in coming to that place where we can love others and give care to others is to acknowledge and be soft towards our own personal struggle, our own personal experiences. To even be compassionate towards the reasons for why we might not be offering ourselves this kind of a thing. And there are all sorts of reasons for why we might not be offering ourselves compassion. We may hear the critical voices of others in our heads. We may be overwhelmed by the expectations of other people. Or like in my story, which may be your story as well, the critical voice of ourselves, the expectations that we've placed on ourselves. So, take one example. Maybe we do feel cold. And maybe we say, well, that's on me. That's on me that I feel cold because I didn't check the weather, I didn't put my socks on today, or I didn't bring a sweater. So this is me just getting what I deserve, right? That's a very typical way of trying to brush it off. Well, I should have known better, and now here I am. And when this happens, we have the opportunity to catch ourselves through this tool that they call radical self-acceptance. And this is also an unfamiliar term to most people in the West. So we tend to think that acceptance means giving up or resigning or opting out of any sort of change. But in point of fact, radical acceptance isn't any of that. It's not resignation. It's not giving up. Rather, it's developing this ability to say, this is my reality right now. This is what actually is. And that's really all that it is. It's being able to start from this place where we are for real right now today. It's bringing ourselves out of that critical space, out of that judgment, and out of that reactivity, and coming into that neutral space so that we can connect with wisdom, so that we can connect with the fruits of the Spirit. And so radical acceptance is this act of pausing and acknowledging this is hard, and I am still learning things. That's all that it is. And then it's taking this moment to offer blessing to ourselves, that rather than chastise ourselves and ruminate, oh man, I can't believe it, it's just too bad, over whatever's been done, whatever's been said, what hasn't been done, what hasn't been said, we just drop into our center. We drop into that core space, that deepest spiritual space, that heart space, into connection with divine, and we start again, right? We just start again. We offer ourselves the same blessing that we were so willing to offer to everyone else. May I be well. May I be safe. May I be at ease. May I be happy. Because if we can't find this first, a way to offer ourselves loving compassion, we do not have what we need in order to offer it for others. We can't actually love our neighbor. We can try, right? We can imitate what we believe it would be like to love our neighbor as ourselves. But we hear a lot about burnout in our world. And it's because of these very sorts of things, because everybody's operating from these very empty tanks, just enough to try to get through the day. And it's not because people are so clearly bad. Intentions tend to be very good. Right? I wanted to do this good thing, and then blah, blah, all this other stuff. We get overrun by our fears, and the ego takes over, and it steals the show, and it happens all the time. And so today, we're going to take some time to work on cultivating this experience of self-compassion. And we're going to do that by using a short guided meditation. So if you can, from wherever you're at, if you are not already in a comfortable position, feel free to go ahead and find a comfortable position. And if you want, and if it would be comfortable for you, you're welcome to close your eyes. And just to continue moving into a space of settling, take a few deep breaths, allowing a sense of sacredness to come along, that the breath is life flowing into our bodies and through our bodies. And if you want, you're welcome to roll the neck or drop the shoulders, just wiggle tension and let the body relax. Allow the body to soften and release. Today, we're taking a moment to focus our attention on the idea of radical acceptance and self-compassion. And so in our mind's eye, imagine that you are sitting by the bank of a river. And as you are sitting by that river, allow yourself to really look around and see the environment. Notice the color of the water, the sound that the water makes as it passes by. Notice the trees along the bank, the curves of the tree trunks, the knots of the tree, any breezes that blow, the color of the leaves. And as you sit in that space, just take in the beauty of the day. The rays of the sunshine, any clouds that would be passing by. Notice how easily the water moves without resistance, just flowing in its direction. Just take a moment to breathe here as you sit by the river. And as you sit here, notice the occasional leaf that might fall and float through the air for a bit and come to land gently on the water. The leaf begins to flow down the stream, a little bit at a time, moving farther and farther away, all with ease until it is out of view. And then notice as another leaf falls into the river. And again, you can see how the leaf moves simply, cradled by the water, traveling away, just as all the leaves that had gone before. And so as we sit watching the leaves fall and float away, allow yourself to be aware of some difficulty in your life. Maybe it's waiting on a result. Maybe it's something you're working on. Maybe it's relational, or something else entirely. But as you are sitting here, just take a moment to notice what difficulty comes to mind. And having named that difficulty, notice another leaf that falls gently onto the water. And this time, as the leaf comes to its new resting spot, imagine placing your difficulty on the leaf. So maybe that's a person or a feeling. Maybe it's an event. But whatever it is, allow that thing to become small enough to be placed on a leaf. And now watch it travel downstream and out of view. And as it is traveling, allow your quality of watching to be neutral. Not judging it as good or bad. It just is, sitting there on a leaf, floating downstream and out of view. If as you do this, you recognize, oh, there are feelings or other people or something else attached to all of this, allow those things to also come to rest on leaves of their own, to become small enough to rest on a leaf and float away without judgment. In the same way that we watch things float away in our mind's eye, we can also allow thoughts, emotions, and judgments to float away throughout the day, allowing the past to be the past. When we do that, what we have now is the present moment. And as much as we may feel tempted to try and control what has already happened or what may happen in the future, it's in this moment that we can rest. That we can know that our control is merely an illusion. And that this moment right now can be a place of relief. In this calm and easy space, if you would like, you can even put a hand over your own heart. Allow your awareness to rest in your heart space. And internally allow yourself to have compassion for you. To internally say, may I be well. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be at ease. And so when you are ready, begin to become aware of your space that you are in. Take a deep breath or two. And when you are ready, open your eyes again. So this is a guided meditation, and the great thing about things like this is that once we've experienced them, we can do them again on our own. And we can do them in a shorter period of time or a longer period of time, just whatever we need in that moment to settle. But one thing that can be helpful whenever we've had a spiritual experience of any kind really is just having this moment to take time to reflect. What just happened? What did I notice? What do I want to remember? And so I want to take a moment to pray for us. I'll give us a moment to reflect on our own, just on these few kind of questions here. And then we'll take a moment for sharing, asking any additional questions that we have. But first, a moment to be with ourselves. Lord, I thank you for my friends. And we thank you for your presence. Lord, we lift up to you the difficulties of our lives and the ways that we can feel in the midst of them. The struggle that can come up in our bodies and our minds. Lord, I pray that you would speak to each person as we sit in this reflective space. What is it that you would like us to take away? What are you speaking to us about personally? Would you come and speak to us now?